Hello and welcome to Psychic Teachers. I'm your host, Deb Bowen.
And I'm Samantha Fay.
And we are just so delighted and honored that you have joined us again this week as we move into one of our monthly segments, our Unsolved Mystery discussion. And we're going to be talking this week about MARIA ORSIC and the Vril Society. We have a ton of stuff to talk about this because it's a really fascinating topic. But before we get into that, as you know, we are offering you a card of the week, and it's Samantha's turn to share a card with us. So Samantha, dear, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. The card I pulled this week is from John Holland's The Psychic Tarot deck. And I just shuffled as I always do and cut the deck and said, what do we all need to hear this week? And the card I pulled is Positive Movement Forward. It says, you are a true artisan, for you have the craft, skills, knowledge, gifts, and talents to assist you even more to advance in a positive direction. Its card is the number 8, which always denotes prosperity and abundance. But in this case, it's your efforts that have gotten you to this point. Good for you. This card indicates reward and recognition, especially for those in the fields of art, design, music, and education. So there you have it. If any of you have been asking for a sign about an artistic or creative project, please take this as more indication that you're on the right path and heading in the right direction. Okay, so Deb is the one who suggested this topic, and it delighted me to no end because I really enjoyed researching this. I'm going to go ahead and give everybody kind of an overview of what we're going to be talking about, and then we'll dive into the details. So Maria Orsic was a German nationalist and a medium. She worked for the Nazis during World War II. She led a Nazi secret society known as the Vril Society, V-R-I-L. And no, we have no idea if we're pronouncing it that correctly. But as you know, we get all of our information primarily through reading, so bear with us with all of our pronunciations this hour. She started this organization after she allegedly received communication from extraterrestrials claiming to be from ancient Sumeria. They told her that they left Sumeria to head for the Aldebaran solar system, which is in the Taurus constellation, 68 light years from Earth. She named the secret organization after an ancient Sumerian word, V-R-I-L-L, Vril or Vril, which means godlike. The members were mainly women who were noted for their long hair. Most of the members had hair that fell down past their hips. And if you think about this, this organization really came together in the 1920s type period. And think about the fashion then. It was the flapper's bob. So to have really long hair made these women stand out. She believed that our hair acts as an antenna, which enabled her to communicate with these alien beings. Orsic said she and her members could use their magic hair and telepathic abilities to get these aliens to help the Nazis win World War II. After communicating with these beings, she would write her notes in an ancient German Templar language, which she claimed she couldn't understand. She would then transcribe the communication again in a language associated with a German occult group called the Thule. After consulting a group of Pan-Babylonists connected to the Thule group, who could transcribe these communications, it was discovered that this second language was a form of the ancient Sumerian language. Once these scripts were fully translated, everyone was surprised to read very detailed instructions on how to build a flying spaceship. Many historians believe the Germans actually did build this and point to all the reports throughout World War II of Foo Fighters, which were unidentified flying objects that infiltrated the air during raids and bombing attempts. Some believe this is the origin of the Nazi bell, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. Many believe there's a lot of credibility to this story. Nazis' leading engineer, Werner von Braun, who later came to America and helped get us to the moon, claimed the Nazis received a ton of advanced knowledge from extraterrestrials. Hermann Oberth, a top Nazi rocket engineer who also came to America to work on our space program, said the Germans couldn't take credit for their advances because they received their information from, quote, people of other worlds. And many, many researchers say that she communicated all of this knowledge to Rudolf Hess. Members of the Vril Society disappeared without a trace. No one knows what happened to them. Maria Orsic left a letter which ended with a quote saying, "No one is staying here." Skeptics who don't believe this story point to the 1871 novel The Coming Race by Edward Bulwer Lytton, which describes an underworld society of superhumans known as the Vril, who were forced underground due to some catastrophe atop Earth. In the novel, the Vril can move things with their minds along with other superpowers. They need more space and have decided to leave the hollow Earth to explore life on the surface. But of course, they have to destroy us to make room for themselves. So if it's true that Orsic got most of her information from this book, where did she and the other Vril members go? No bodies were ever found. How was she able to transcribe in 2 languages instructions for building a spaceship? Also something to think about, the author of the book was a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and a noted theosophist. He was also a member of the British royalty who served as Secretary of State for the British colonies. Of course, he's best known for the opening line, "It was a dark and stormy night." That's a summary of the story. Let's dissect the details. First of all, Deb, what are your thoughts on what you researched just from this point forward?
Samantha, I have to tell you, I, of course, researched, and your summary was beautifully done, by the way. And I guess the sentence that just, in everything I read, was the bodies were never found. What happened to these people? Sci-fi novel is what it feels like to me. But on the other hand, there's enough historical information that parallels what we know by now was in fact happening between World War II and World War I and World War II. And so the answer is yes, I don't know, maybe.
Well, let's look at Maria Orsic a little more closely.
Okay, great.
It's said that she was born on October 31st, 1895 in Vienna. Now, her birth date alone makes me feel like this is a sci-fi novel because really she's born on Halloween. Her dad was a Croatian immigrant. Her mom was born and raised in Vienna. She moved to Munich with her fiancé in 1919, where she became connected with the Vril Society. Initially, she started a group called the All-German Society for Metaphysics. She began the group to explore creating a matriarchal socialist community where people could live in harmony. Some say her group combined Theosophist teachings with Kabbalistic teachings and Hindu mysticism. It's believed she and other members also studied the Golden Dawn and many ancient secret societies like the Yellow Hat. Now, that I found really interesting. This Tibetan secret sect was formed in 1409 by a Buddhist reformer. Once sworn in, you would promise to commit suicide if you spilled a secret or failed in a mission. What's interesting is that after they linked up with members of the Yellow Hat, 4 Tibetan colonies sprung up in Germany. And I thought, is there a connection for this between Germany and Japan forming an alliance? They also studied the hidden secrets of the Knights Templar through contacts with members of a group called Inheritors of the Knights Templars. Maria and her associates believed they were in the transition between the age of Pisces and the new age of Aquarius. So there are some reports, Deb, that Maria Orsic was actually a really nice person who was trying to bring in this idealistic new age where more women were in charge and there was more of an equality and sharing. And yet we know that she worked very closely with prominent, awful members of the Nazi Party. What do you think?
I wonder, and so much of what I've read about World War II is that people were certainly led to believe that what the Nazi Party was doing was wonderful, and they really felt like it was the right way to be in the world, and that they were not privy to so much of the horrors behind the scene. So, if we take this at the face value of here is a really nice woman who is really trying to bring in metaphysics to the concepts that she has been led to believe were the premises of the Nazi Party, maybe she was doing what she thought was the right thing.
So much information is lost. Now, in December of 1919 or 1920, she and another medium named Sigrun, Sigrun, of whom there is really no information, met some members of the Vril Society and another secret organization called the DHVSS, which translates to Men of the Black Stone. And we'll be telling you more about that group in a little bit. It's here that she began writing her instructions for creating the spaceship. Some reports say that parts began arriving as early as 1922. She met Rudolf Hess in 1924. He wanted to contact his deceased friend Dietrich Eckart, but during the seance, her eyes rolled back in her head, revealing only the whites of her eyes. And she began channeling a voice claiming to have inhabited Earth 500 million years ago in Sumeria. The voice claimed these ancient Sumis built many structures throughout Iraq, and after the Great Flood, survivors became the ancestors of the Aryan race. One of the men with Hess remained skeptical and asked for proof. And so Maria Orsic scribbled some odd markings on a piece of paper, which later turned out to be from the ancient Sumerian language. Together, this group also explored the spear of destiny, a magical violet-black stone, and extraterrestrial contact. Their symbol was the black sun. It's an ancient esoteric symbol depicting a center black circle with 12 sig runes fanning out around it. 2 of these sig runes make up the infamous SS symbol of the Nazi Party. Some people believe that the SS symbol of the Nazi Party actually comes from that Men of the Black Stone group, which called themselves DHVSS. But most believe it's from this sig rune. Sig is a form of the Norse word for sun. The 12 runic sigs around the center black circle are supposed to depict the 12 months or 12 revolutions of the moon around the sun. Heinrich Himmler refurbished a castle between the years 1936 and 1942 and had this symbol carved into the main floor. I believe you can still see this, but I'm not 100% sure. But you can see pictures of this castle and the black sun on the floor on Google, on the computer. Beginning in 1933, it's believed this society received backing from the Nazi Party for what they called disc developments. Many called this machine the Vril machine, and some believe it was a time machine. Now, I just want to pause here a minute, Deb, because we've talked about this in our other show on World War II. The Nazis definitely used psychics and astrologers. I mean, that's how we caught Hess, was by setting up a phony astrologer situation. And yet there was a time when Hitler's main psychic started predicting that he would not win the war, and then Hitler had all the psychics rounded up and put in the concentration camps. Remember when we discussed that?
I sure do.
And I found it interesting that this group, the Vril group, and Maria Orsic and her other medium friends were not part of this roundup. What do you think? I wonder, what's that about?
I gave that some thought. And this is just Deb's theory. This may who knows. But at that point in time, remember the psychics were saying things are not going to be good. This is, it's not going to end the way Hitler wants it to end. What is Marie and her friends doing? What are they doing? They're building a spaceship. I mean, they're working on ways to escape. And so maybe that's where some of the higher echelon of the Nazi Party pinned its hope, was that there may be a way out of here into another dimension, another place.
Right. It's so crazy to think about all of that. Beginning in 1933 is when they started to make this machine. And there's so much debate on what actually this machine was. German aircraft historian Henry Stevens wrote it was called Haunebu 1 and Haunebu 2. Again, right. No idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's spelled Haunebu. And Stevens said Haunebu 1 was allegedly the first large flying saucer developed in Germany. According to plans allegedly obtained from classified German SS files, the Haunebu 1 was approximately 75 feet in diameter and probably lifted off for the first time in August 1939, a few weeks before the full outbreak of World War II. And you can see sketches of this online if you Google it. Actually, I think the sketches of Haunebu 2 that's online. Some claim that in 1944, Maria Orsic and Hess met Hitler and others to discuss sending one of these Vril machines, which they called the Vril 7 Jaeger, through a dimensional channel to this planet. And then, of course, in 1945, Orsic and her members disappeared without a trace. And did you see her picture online?
Yeah, she was lovely.
I wonder if that's an actual photo, because you can see photos of her and photos of some of the other female members. She's so pretty. It almost looks fake.
And certainly all that hair. I mean, good golly.
Well, one person said I was just down a rabbit hole on internet, and one person had pulled up a Breck commercial, remember the hair product from the 60s?
Uh-huh.
And there was a woman on that ad campaign who did look a lot like her. And he was trying to say that that's not actually a photo of her. Someone Photoshop this. I don't know. Hitler, along with Göring, Heinrich Himmler, and even Hitler's personal physician, were said to have been members of this Vril Society. Now, Maria Orsic, was known for teaching her members concentration exercises, and they were rumored to practice channeled traveling and even interdimensional traveling. In 1935, German rocket scientist and science fiction writer Willy Ley fled Nazi Germany for the U.S. He mentions in an article he wrote in 1937 that there was a group called the Society for Truth that formed to look for the real existence of Vril in order to build a perpetual motion machine. While some believe they never existed at all, some think the Vril Society left for a galaxy far, far away, while still others believe they escaped to an underground facility in Antarctica. And I did some research on Antarctica. Do you want me to mention that now or later?
I do, because that whole connection with Nazi Germany and Antarctica has been on my research list for a long time, so tell us about it.
That's a whole nother rabbit hole, isn't it, to go into Antarctica. I mean, so I didn't do a ton of research, but I just wanted to look at what actually is some of the theory on that. We signed this treaty that said nobody would create a civilization in Antarctica. Some claim Hitler actually ordered an expedition aiming to find an entrance to this hollow earth when he sent men to Antarctica in 1933. It was said that they just went there to look at whale fat for ways of adding fat to the German diet. But I found it interesting that right after he sent that expedition to Antarctica, then suddenly England sent an expedition to Antarctica. The Admiral Karl Dönitz mentioned this during the Nuremberg trial when he said, "The German submarine fleet has even now established an earthly paradise, an impregnable fortress for the Fuhrer in whatever part of the world." Although he did not give an exact location, many believed he was talking about Antarctica. And so a lot of people think that Hitler and his people may have even escaped to Antarctica. So as I said, in 1959, 53 countries signed this treaty that severely restricts travel to Antarctica. And also, all these countries had a promise that whatever they do in Antarctica, it shall be used for peaceful purposes only. Now, one of the things I found really interesting, so if you ever have seen that show, I think it's called Chasing Hitler or Finding Hitler, or if you read the book Ratlines, there's lots of evidence and conspiracy theories that show Hitler and some of his men went to Argentina. Have you heard that before?
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, and in fact, a lot of his folks were, in fact, captured from Argentina.
Well, guess who owns large parts of Antarctica? Argentina.
Well, who knew?
They have 6 permanent stations there and 7 summer stations, which I think is interesting. And then check this out. In 1952, President Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "We have been unable to unearth one bit of tangible evidence of Hitler's death. Many people believe that Hitler escaped from Berlin." It's the Soviet army who came across Hitler's bunker, right? There they found the charred remains of Hitler and supposedly Eva Braun. They couldn't recognize who they belonged to. The corpses were buried, but then in 1970, Brezhnev ordered them exhumed, incinerated, and dispersed in the waters in order to prevent fanatics' pilgrimages.
And also to prevent conclusive evidence of who they were.
Right. Now, Stalin's top army officer at the time, Marshal Gregory Zhukov, whose troops were the first to enter Berlin, flatly stated after a long, thorough investigation in 1945, "We have found no corpse that could be Hitler's." The chief of the U.S. trial counsel at Nuremberg, Thomas J. Dodd, said, "No one can say he is dead." Former Secretary of State Jimmy Byrnes, in his book, Frankly Speaking, stated, after the war at the Potsdam Conference of the Big Four, he met Stalin, who, quote, "left his chair, came over, and clinked his liquor glass with mine in a very friendly manner. I said to him, 'Marshal Stalin, what is your theory about the death of Hitler?' Stalin replied, 'He is not dead. He escaped either to Spain or Argentina." Some claim that according to German Marine records, months after the Nazis surrendered to the Allies in 1945, a U-530 submarine reached Antarctica, and there, members of the crew either stayed or left something important hidden in a cave before continuing on to Argentina. And then we have this thing called Operation High Jump, where After the war, the U.S. sent 4,000 troops to Antarctica to establish a research base. But many believe we actually went there to see if Hitler actually did have a secret base there. And what's weird, there's a whole website on celebrities who have visited Antarctica. Some of the people who have recently been there include President Bill Clinton, Prince Harry, the King of Spain, the head of the Orthodox religion in Russia, which I found interesting, Deb, because he went there right after meeting Pope Francis, John Kerry, Tom Hanks, and Buzz Aldrin.
Why? Why those particular people? And wonder what drove them there and wonder what they were able to see. And, of course, we're chasing the rabbit hole of Argentina and Antarctica with this, but what if he got on that spaceship that the whole leaders of the Nazi Party got on Maria's spaceship and off they went?
Well, if you research the Nazi bell, that's what many conspiracy theorists believe they actually built. It's a bell-shaped UFO that some believe existed and others think is just a myth. Some believe it was capable of time travel, or traveling through wormholes. The bell flying saucer was said to be powered by a liquid red fuel known as serum 525. Author Henry Stevens said this fuel was red mercury. It was placed in a large, counter-rotating cylinder that spun at high speeds, and the rapid spinning, combined with highly charged electrostatic tube, created anti-gravity propulsion that actually propelled this spaceship. After World War II, an SS member named Jacob Borenberg was tried for war crimes, and in his court affidavit, Borenberg gave details of the Nazi Bell project. He spoke about the secrecy surrounding the bell, said scientists and engineers were murdered to prevent them from disclosing any details about technology of this Nazi bell to the world. He said the bell was a highly advanced technology that produced a hissing or buzzing sound when operational. Because of this, many Germans referred to the bell as Der Bienenstock, which is German for beehive. He also said the bell's test ruins can be found in a concrete structure at a mine in Poland and gave very specific directions. So a man named Igor Wachowski, he wrote a book on this. He went through all the Nuremberg and files and all sorts of court testimonies from former SS officers and wrote a book about this Nazi bell called The Wonder Weapon. And if you Google Igor Wachowski and the Nazi bell, you can see him standing in this huge iron outline of a bell in this mine in Poland, exactly where this former SS officer said he would find it. Now, Wachowski said that the bell was eventually moved to Argentina, where it's rumored, as we said, several Nazis fled after the war. A military journalist named Nick Cook read that book, The Wonder Weapon, and wrote his own about the Nazi bell, and he agrees with Wachowski's findings, but his research shows that the bell was then moved here to America and might even be outside Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. What's weird is if you read that wonderful book, Operation Paperclip, about how we took all these Nazi scientists, engineers, rocket scientists, and just glossed over and overlooked all of their war crimes to take them here to America to work on our rocket space program. And I just find it interesting that we had such an interest in them, and then this man Nick Cook believes this Nazi bell ended up here in America too. You know, in Operation Paperclip, the writer says that Warner von Braun was such a loyal Naziist. Is that a word, Naziist? I don't think that is. Was such a loyal Nazi that he would show up to work here in America in his SS uniform some days.
Good God. Wow.
I know.
Let's take a break and let folks sort of absorb that for a minute or two and fill people in on what we've got going on in our lives.
And when we come back from our little break, I will tell you how Maria Orsic and Tesla might actually have something in common.
Ooh, okay. So tell us about what you're doing.
In May, I'm going to be teaching my Be Your Own Psychic webinar. I'm very excited. I haven't taught this class in 2 years, so I'm looking forward to diving back into this topic. It's going to be May 9th, 16th, and 23rd from 7 to 8:30 p.m., and everyone who signs up can join on Zoom, which you can access via your computer or your phone. And we're going to go over chakras, meditation guides, angels, psychic tools, and each week you'll be partnered up with someone new from class to practice different psychic exercises like remote viewing, sending and receiving information, and doing actual readings for your partner. So it's a really fun, chock full of information, interactive webinar. In June, I'm going to be teaching the beginner's mediumship class. That's going to be Thursdays in June, again from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And just remember that these are all recorded video classes, so if you can't make one of the nights, everyone in class does get the video emailed to them the very next day. All of that information can be found on my website, SamanthaFaye.com. How about you, Deb?
As many of our listeners know, I also have a book club that meets in April. It will meet on Thursday, the 18th, from 1:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon Eastern Time. We are discussing Sue Monk Kidd's wonderful book, and I felt like there was so much to talk about in that book that it needed to be broken into 2 months. The book club is free, doesn't cost anything, but you do need to pre-register so that I can email you call-in instructions. We talk on the phone and give you some prompts and questions that we'll be discussing. So if you want to join in, you need to let me know by April 15th. The email to send that to is all one thing, debbowenandfriends@gmail.com. And then on the 5th of May, which I know is Cinco de Mayo, but it is also a Sunday afternoon, and we are going to gather at Mystic Elements in Wilmington, North Carolina for a croning ceremony. And what we're going to do in that wonderful afternoon is that we're going to gather to celebrate and honor and talk about our journeys to being, quote, older, wise women, unquote. My definition of a crone is if you think you are one, you are. We're going to create an altar that brings us together and find sisterhood, and we are going to then create crowns and have a ritual in which we are crowned and honored for being the wise ones on the planet. It's going to be a lovely afternoon. Would love to have you join me. You can find out information about that and a link to registration and my book club on my website, debbowen.com, DEBBOWEN.com.
Sounds fascinating. I also offer a lot of downloadable e-courses, so if you can't join me for any of the webinars, you can always do the downloadable Be Your Own Psychic course. And we get a lot of questions about psychic kids, and I just want to remind everyone I have an e-course on raising a spiritual child, which a lot of people have found helpful. So if you get a minute, please go to Deb's website, debbowen.com, or mine, SamanthaFaye.com, and check out all the other great things we have to offer there. Are we ready to dive back into our topic? So I'm not going to go into Tesla's background because I'm going to assume that our listeners know who he was and all the wonderful things that he invented and researched. There was a connection between these two. Now, I had a really hard time nailing this down, so I don't know how true all of this is, and I just wanted to put that caveat out there. Tesla is said to have written about aliens in Sanskrit. He believed that there are 2 types of aliens warring with each other, and to protect humanity, it said that he invented that weapon called the death ray, which he said was able to destroy any kind of spacecraft. He said to have written, "I've devised a way for people to transport enormous amounts of energy from one planet to another, regardless of the distance between." That was in a statement from 1931. Now, what I found interesting, he died in 1949, and remember, Maria Orsic disappeared in 1945. And there are some conspiracy theorists who believe that the two were in communication and that there have been notes and letters exchanged between the two. One thing I found interesting, it's a pretty well-known fact, the government did go into Tesla's hotel. He ended up living in a hotel towards the end of his life, and all of his notes and journals were confiscated by the U.S. And it just makes you wonder why.
Yeah, it does. He was such a brilliant man and just light years ahead of his time in his thinking and his inventions. And so on one hand, you can see why the government would want what Tesla knew.
You know, it's really fun. I don't want to go off tangent, but Tesla, if you study his biography, he's got such a fascinating story. His mother was so brilliant. She was a stay-at-home mom, but she invented all these household things to make cleaning her home easier. And a lot of people think he got his brains from her. And I just like that idea. He was into free energy. And there's a lot of people who believe Maria Orsic was as well. Again, going back to that question we posed at the beginning, was she evil or was she good and coerced into working for the Nazis? I don't know. I wanted to talk for a minute about the Lords of the Black Stone, that group we mentioned early on. I could not find a ton of information on them. So I know we have a lot of librarians who listen to the show. I found about 3 websites and 1 book that mentioned the Lords of the Black Stone briefly, but if anyone has more information, please let us know. It's said to be a black-violet crystal that's half amethyst, half quartz, through which God or higher beings can communicate with us. Now, what's interesting is the Muslims claim to have a black stone. Their story says the Archangel Gabriel gave it to them, and it sits today in Saudi Arabia, and all Muslims are supposed to take a pilgrimage at least once in their life to visit this black stone. It's believed this is the stone mentioned in the Bible when Jacob has that dream at Bethel. But the Germans have a tradition that the Knights Templars are guarding not a holy grail, but a holy stone, a holy black stone. They take the Persian Arabic word grail, spelled G-H-R-A-L, which means stone, and they believe this stone was given into the care of the Cathars. And if any of you guys have read Holy Blood, Holy Grail, you'll know that the Catholic Church destroyed the Cathars. And there's been a lot of speculation as to why. Why was the Church so intent on eradicating all of the Cathars? What is it that the Cathars knew or had that the Church wanted? After the Cathars were destroyed, the black stone was said to have been smuggled out to Montségur, France, where it was said to be hidden by 4 Cathar women in 1244. Legend says, let me rephrase that, German legend says, the stone would be found 700 years later and returned to its rightful owners. So that would be 1944.
I'm confused about something. This black stone, why did the Templars want it? Why were they protecting you?
Well, it's said that there's this crystal that enabled God or higher beings to talk to us. And so some people speculate that all the crusades and all that fighting that went on throughout the Holy Wars wasn't to get the Holy Grail, wasn't to determine the secret of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, that it was to get this stone that enabled you to communicate with these beings. Some people think Solomon had it, and that's how he was able to control those other beings to create his temple. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's not a rock. Maybe it's something otherworldly that we can't really even comprehend.
I'm still pondering the sentence you used, and I don't know if you meant this literally, was it allow God to communicate with us? Why does God need a rock to communicate with people?
Right. Or why do you need long hair to communicate? I don't understand. I don't understand any of it
either.
What I do find fascinating is that so much in so many of the Unsolved Mystery shows you and I do, circle around to the same themes. I mean, how many times have we mentioned the Golden Dawn or the Theosophist Society?
Oh, forever, eternally.
And how interesting, and what exactly did they know, and what exactly were they hiding or revealing or understanding? I've never really dived into the Theosophist Society at length because I read quite a bit of stories of Madame Blavatsky faking some of her abilities. Haven't you seen that, where her servant came forward and said that she would help her infiltrate a couple of hoaxes?
Oh, yes, I have read that. I've read the official biography of her that, of course, proposes that she is all that she says she is. And I've read the refuting documentaries as well. And who knows? But we do know she and her organization and the Golden Dawn and all of those groups that sprang up really in the turn of the 20th century, late 1800s, early 1900s. All of that really paved the way, whether we want to talk about it or admit it or not, to so much of what became New Age thought, what became today's metaphysics.
And what exactly can we take from some of this? I mean, if you look at, I mentioned the Crusades. We all know. I mean, what exactly were they fighting over back then? You know, I just got from the library A Distant Mirror. It's a really thorough, hard book on she calls it the calamitous 14th century. And it talks in there about how they did so much cultural persuasion to get people to really love and embrace war so that people would have motivation to keep going down to the Middle East for these crusades. And so she was writing this from a very historical perspective on how much it cost to get these armies together and what the lords and barons and whatnot had to do to get the knights to fight with them and all of that. But as I'm reading this, I was thinking, why have we always been going to the same center of the world to fight again and again and again? Why are the three biggest religions all fighting over the same piece of real estate?
Samantha, I have wondered that since I was studying the Bible as a teenager. I have wondered that very thing. Why that tiny little piece of barren land, for the most part, does such controversy stem from that space? And I don't know the answer. I don't know that any of us know the answer. But I believe that at the time that Jesus was alive, Israel, at that time, I think I've got this correct, was 19 miles wide and 49 miles long. That's in our mindset, that's less than the length of two counties where we live. Tiny little country. And so what is it about that space that is just the way it is? I remember reading Exodus by Leon Uris, and of course at the time just loving it and really absorbing what I know now, of course, is kind of propaganda writing. But because, I so wanted Israel to become a country, it was right after World War II when this book was set, and the beginnings of the country, the nation of Israel as it is today, and just being mesmerized and so saddened by conflicts in that tiny little space. And I still am. And I wonder, when you look at that and you compare the conflict and controversy in that area of the world and what, as you say, kings and religious leaders did, particularly in the 1300s, to secure a foothold and a financial foothold across Europe and into the Middle East. And you compare that to modern world where you've got somebody who's wanting to take folks and get them off the planet, as Maria and her folks did. What is it about particular places on earth with such controversy and particular mindsets like Maria and the Vril Society and the Theosophists and the Golden Dawn folks who have this philosophy of how we could live or should live, and nothing's changed for thousands of years. The conflicts still exist. The issues between groups of people still exist.
Well, it just seems as though a lot of information has been withheld from us on purpose. I find it fascinating that we have Jesus' missing years, and a lot of people speculate that he went to Tibet and studied Buddhism or something like that. And then here we are doing this research on the Vril Society and this medium, Maria Orsic, and what comes up in the research? Tibetan secret societies. I just find it so interesting that when you dive down these rabbit holes, the same things come up again and again and again. And there's got to be a connection there. It's well documented that the Nazis were also actively searching for the spear of destiny, which is said to be the spear that one of the Roman soldiers used to spear, I can't even say it, but to hurt Jesus. And the rumor is that whoever owns the spear of destiny will have control of the world.
Whoa, and you've just described the Elder Wand in Harry Potter.
Well, yeah, if you read Harry Potter, you know that J.K. Rowling has a huge understanding of a lot of ancient myths and occult history.
And I love the way that really good literature often mirrors these kinds of theories, because there it is,
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail your train, but it was such a clear sentence.
I just find it so fascinating that we have these things documented. We have these men quoted as saying in court testimony, yeah, we were working on a spaceship, we called the Bell. Yeah, Hitler was going after the Nazi Bell. Yeah, Rudolf Hess did believe in all of this occult symbolism and astrology and things like that. I majored in history. I never studied this in school. It just seems as though a lot of this information is being kept from us. And if you can judge by the looks teachers gave me when I would ask questions in class, if you do try to research this on a scholarly level, you are rebuked or thought of as odd or different. That seems to be a conspiracy in and of itself. Sure, let all the information stay out there. We can't kill it all, but just judge anyone who believes it or looks at it as odd or other or different, and then they'll stop.
True. Well, history, of course, is written by the victors, and when things do leak out, information does leak out that's counter to what is mainstream, you're right. You're supposed to toe the company line, as they say. I think for me, while this is a fascinating story and fun to speculate, there's for me the issue of, as you say, what else don't we know, and what else is going on that could potentially change the direction of the world that we don't have a clue. We don't know.
Well, something that I was thinking about when I was writing my notes for this episode, we have all this proof that the Nazis did lean heavily on occult beliefs and occult teachers and leaders and mystics and mediums. We know that the British government did too. I mean, it's been pretty well proven that the Peace for Victory symbol that Winston Churchill used was given to him by Aleister Crowley, who was hired by the British government to work for MI5 and to counter propaganda stuff for Germany, and that the peace symbol for victory that he gave Winston Churchill is actually an ancient pagan symbol for protection. We talked on this show about the Battle of Britain and how all these wonderful witches got together and helped save Britain from a German invasion.
Yeah, the woman who knew about the ship that sank.
Helen Dugan.
Helen, yeah.
Or Duncan. And yet America won the war, and I can't find anything about Americans relying on occult anything during World War II or really any time. Well, other than the Founding Fathers. There's that weird footnote where George Washington was helped by a unknown spirit. But we don't have any occult group in America that helped America during World War I or II that I've come across. I could be wrong. I just haven't come across of it. Have you?
No, I have not. But that might be something that, again, if our listeners have any information on that, I'd sure love to hear it, know about it.
Yeah, me too. Because I would think if I were in direct communication with these beings from another planet who lived on Earth 500 million years ago and were so advanced that they now live 68 light years away and can visit us at will, I would think they would have a chance of winning this awful war. And yet it's we who won the war,
right,
which gives me hope in light of what you were just saying, that the good side does always win.
I hear you. And, but you're right. In America, if you are somebody who accepts, Bigfoot, for example, or that cattle mutilations are done by laser cuttings from off-planet beings, or, whatever, then you're weird. You're just strange. It's not accepted as potentially some piece of information that's a part of a larger puzzle that we don't know about.
Deb, it seems to be even deeper than you're weird. I tried telling a lot of my friends about the research I was doing this week, and I'm not like an intellectual snob, but I like to have friends who are smart and up to date and well researched and interested in current events. And all of these women, one by one, I would tell them what I was doing this week, and they'd go, "Oh, that's interesting," and then they change the subject. It's like nobody even wants to look at this stuff. I think that's what disturbs me more. I've wrestled with being weird. I said on this show at our last episode of 2018, I'm prepared to let my freak flag fly. Like, I am weird, I am different, I own it. What I can't wrestle with is the inability of the ordinary person to find any interest in this. What is that about? The Romans said the way to rule a civilization is by giving them bread and entertainment. I know I'm mangling that quote, but that's the crux of what they said. If you give the people bread and entertainment, you'll never have a revolt, a rebellious soul. And I look around at our society. Everybody has bread, and God knows we have tons of entertainment. Everyone's on their phone, everyone's on their TV, on their video game, looking at binging TV shows. To me, that troubles me more. That nobody is even interested in looking at this.
I just have to say one little caveat. The old social worker in me has to say, no, Samantha, everybody doesn't have bread.
I said in this country anyway, we have access to a lot of food. And I know not everybody does.
I just know that that's one of those sentences that somebody's going to say, oh, but that isn't true. And I understand your intent of your sentence. But the entertainment piece of what you're saying, you bet I agree with. We are way too entertained. And
I think that's the new way to distract us from the truth.
I don't even think we know anymore what the truth is.
True.
Because there's so many versions of the truth. Gandhi said, no one has the right to take another one's life for his version of truth.
I want to get to a place where it's not even that we're called weird for being interested in the occult connections to World War II and beyond. I want to get to a place where we are all demanding the truth. And one of my favorite websites is theblackvault.com. And that was started by a wonderfully intelligent man in his high school years when the Freedom of Information Act was signed. He just started requesting all these reports on everything from UFOs to government secrets to everything. And he just started publishing them online on theblackvault.com. You can research anything on there. I just think we need more people like that, more people that are invested in getting to whatever the truth is or whatever is being kept from us. So I'm not suggesting we need to add Maria Orsic and the Vril Society to the history curriculum in high schools. But I am saying that all of us listening to this show, I think we all need to wake up a little bit and ask ourselves, what's really going on? What are we really fighting over? I mean, we're always told, oh, it's over the rights of people. Oh, it's over oil. Now we're being told it's over water. What are we really fighting about? What are they keeping from us?
And who are they?
That's another very good question. If you want more information about this, you can find a lot of interesting websites online. I'd also recommend Unholy Alliance, A History of Nazi Involvement with the Occult by Peter Levenda. That's a pretty thorough book on this whole topic. There's a lot of good information on the Crystal Links website, Secret Machines, Gods of Man and War, which has a lot of information on this. Of course, I loved Morning of the Magicians, which mentions so much about these secret societies. Peter Levenda also has a book called Stairway to Heaven, Chinese Alchemists, Jewish Kabbalists, and the Art of Spiritual Transformation. That kind of lends some more information to some of this interconnectedness between all of these different beliefs. What was the X-Files thing, that the truth is out there? Isn't that what they used to always say in their shows?
Oh, you can't ask me that. I never saw a version of the X-Files.
Right. I think it is. It's the truth is out there, and I believe the truth is out there. So go online and research more of this for yourself. Look up Maria Orsic and let me know if you think she's a Breck model or if that's actually a photo of her, because I'm suspicious of all of this, but I still find it fascinating. Do you have any final thoughts?
Samantha and I present these topics to you just to give you food for thought, just to look at the world through another lens and to be curious. And more than anything else, we really hope that that's what our Unsolved Mystery shows do, is help you to be curious, give you food for thought, ideas for research, and just for you to make up your own mind about what is your truth and what you believe, and based on some kind of fact-finding mission for yourself. So we hope you enjoy these. We enjoy doing them. We have other things coming for you in the near future on similar topics.
And I just want to say the jury is still out on Maria Orsic. Was she a good, decent person? Was she working for the Nazis? Nobody really knows.
Is she still alive?
Is she still alive? Is she 68 light years away or in some weird, creepy hollow earth? Who knows? But I just wanted to also mention that if she was not a good person and was working for the Nazis, she's another good reminder then of how being spiritual, being psychic, and being a medium does not necessarily a good, highly evolved person make you. You can use this ability for good or bad. And I think we all need to be conscious of that, especially when we're seeking out intuitives for our own personal guidance. Use your own discernment, as Deb always says.
Right. Thank you so much for being with us, folks. We certainly have enjoyed being with you, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a great week. Don't forget to be the light for yourself and others. Take care, everyone.